2017, I have to be retrained. These are the topics that we're going to be addressing today. We're going to move through the topics, beginning with an introduction, defining the critical terms and defining any critical terminology as we go, through a discussion of the types of medical devices. We'll then walk through the classification process step by step for the United States and finish with a brief discussion or overview of medical device classification in the EU, particularly how it pertains to the new medical device regulation. And I say briefly or as an overview because classification in the EU is a bit more complex than in the United States, and certainly as a topic, webinar topic unto itself. So we'll just touch upon that today, and I'll give you some direction. Okay, I'd like to begin with just a brief overview of medical device classifications and certainly how they apply globally. Basically, every medical device is regulated in some way by the various regulatory agencies that govern them throughout the world, such as the FDA, the EU, and Health Canada. These regulatory agencies among themselves have defined sets of rules and regulations regarding medical devices to include how they are classified. The rules and regulations that might apply to your particular medical device really depend upon how your product is classified by each agency within the countries where you'll be marketing your product. Each global agency has defined several different classifications for medical devices. They all essentially have their own nuance or their own way of doing it. In general, the classifications are related to the perceived risk that the device or that devices pose to the patient population. There's good news here, and that good news certainly is that there are many similarities that we can generalize upon in terms of how medical devices are classified across the globe. In the United States, medical devices are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, specifically the CDRH, or the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. This group within the FDA has the responsibility specifically for medical devices. Their mission is a simple one: to protect and promote public health, to ensure that medical devices are safe. Now, why should we, or why does is the process of classifying medical devices important? Why should we even address the subject? Well, classifying your product according to the appropriate criteria will certainly determine what you must do before you can sell your product. It determines the submissions pathway that you need to take, it particularly and almost specifically in the United States. I'm referring to now. Classifying your product certainly will also help you to establish what is required during product development and how design controls will apply to your device. And finally, product classification will determine the resulting costs that may or may not be associated with bringing your product to market. It really defines or helps you define and helps you cost out that process. And if we look at this from an example standpoint, a Class 1 device and a Class 3 device really are vastly different. And they are vastly different concerning the costs that must be applied and the time required to bring a product to market. If we look at a quick example, or if we address a quick example of the implications of classification upon a medical device, you can begin to see how this works. If we look at, our example here is a Class 1 scalpel used to cut tissue. If you don't have to change the device itself, you don't have to change the device itself, the packaging or anything else about the device to move your product to a different class. Simply adjusting the label can actually have a major or significant impact on your device's classification. As I said before, this example is a scalpel. Everybody knows what a scalpel does. It's used to cut through tissue. If you bring a scalpel onto the market with a general label that indicates its use is to simply cut tissue, we all know what it would be classified as in the US. It'd be classified as a Class 1 device. If, on the other hand, you label the exact same scalpel for I practiced this 5 times this afternoon, ophthalmology and eye surgery use, then that scalpel, that same scalpel, becomes a class 3 device, requiring a much more complex bring to market process, and certainly incurring way more costs. Now, from a regulatory perspective, why would a manufacturer want to do this? It's clearly not in their best interest to take that same device and classify it in a higher classification. So in this particular case, the challenge becomes getting this particular scalpel onto the market for general use as a class 1 device, which would be considered the least burdensome path. Then encouraging surgeons to use it for other uses such as eye surgery. And there are many subtle and not so subtle ways that this certainly can be done. It's truly about having a proper strategy, or this process is truly about having a proper strategy for classifying your device and making the proper device classification decisions. It also helps, too, as an aside, to have outside consulting support when formulating your classification strategy to make sure that you make those correct classification decisions. Now, let's step back for a moment and define what exactly a medical device is. So we're all on the same sheet of music, and we're all certain as to what that definition is. Every regulatory entity goes to great lengths to define what a medical device is relative to their classification process. Um, a medical device, according to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and as defined by the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, 21 U.S. Code 321H. And here's the laundry list as it comes right out of the regulation. A medical device is defined as an instrument, apparatus, implement, machine, contrivance, implant, in vitro reagent, or other similar or related article with that is intended for use in the diagnosis of disease or other conditions, or in the cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in man or other animals, intended to affect the structure or any function of the body of man or other animals, does not achieve any of its primary intended purposes through chemical action within or on the body of man or other animals, which would make it, if it did, a pharmaceutical or biologic product, and which is not dependent upon being metabolized for the achievement of any of its primary intended purposes. Again, that would make it a pharmaceutical or biological product.